Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. And while Zooming, everyone, thank you very much. Once again, we are here together to renew our friendship in Dharma by learning, thinking, reflecting, and particularly these topics of mind and mental factors according to the Sutra, Shastra and Tantra. So this is our second last session. Before we do that, we will do the refuge prayers, during which you can include anyone who is not in good space or recently passed away. I just heard someone passing in Kathmandu who's been doing a lot of Dharma work. He's been responsible for publishing most of the Sakyapa works. And so he's actually one of my cousins, and he's one of the monks who also finished 3-year retreat under His Eminence guidance. He's the same age as me, but anyway, he passed away. And so his sister passed away 3 months ago, and so he joined her. His name is Lama Guru. So all the collection of sadhanas, collection of tantras, all the lamre, all those texts, he organized to input them in computer. And now everybody can remember him for his work more clearly, because he's died, but his good deed remains. If everyone could do like him, it's not too bad. So with this in mind, we will offer prayers for the benefit and happiness of living and deceased consciousness to move and find a very peaceful space and useful rebirth, no doubt. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajara Vida Enlightenment by virtue Ajivandala Ajara Buddha Vajrabe and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajara Vida Enlightenment by virtue Ajivandala Ajara Buddha Vajrabe and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajara Vida Enlightenment by virtue Ajivandala Ajara Buddha Vajrabe. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and cause of suffering. May they know a power of happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, of those in the envy. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and cause of suffering. May they know a power of happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, of those in the envy. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, those never. Go to the intelligence and predisposition of it. The Dharma, agrelo and come virgos. We have gone through the 51 mental factors according to the Sutra and Shastras. But last session we started talking about the mind and mental factors according to the Tantra, particularly Guhya Samanja Tantra. Guhya Samanja Tantra is more explicit in listing the 18 natural conceptions that are totally to do with the experience during the last last segment of death, before the consciousness leaves the body. But after the consciousnesses, the active, operative, sensorial consciousness have all become inoperative. Means no taste, no seeing, no visual, no auditory, no olfactory, no gustatory, no even tactile consciousness remains. So to the naked eye person or normal scientist person, the person has died, basically. So when Guhya Samanja's Panchakrama talks about the 18 natural conceptions, these are only mentioned in the Tantra specifically, and that is all to do with the pre-clear light of death experience and post-dissolution of the older 25 gross substances. So it is completely unknown to anybody. Only when you hear them described, you can appreciate such a phenomena exist. Even normal gross mind and mental functions are not easy to subjectively know by the person themselves. Like a person is not aware when he's angry. When he's angry, he thinks he's not angry, for instance. So those are mentioned in the Abhidharma, such as gross root afflictions and secondary afflictions. So a person is usually not able to tell his own mind whipping it up, but yet he is not aware of it. So even in a everyday-to-day situation, most people are not able to tell their own thought, is that what it's doing? They always project or see something externally. So how much harder would be to see these 18 natural conceptions? 18 natural conceptions only after the clinical death. So it's not something you and I could easily say, yes, understand them, but we just have to look at them. These are mentioned in the text called Panchakrama, 5 stages, and largely to do with the completion stage practices. People who know how to do completion stage meditation, during which we try to see the natural dissolution of your 25 gross substances, such as the earth and water and fire and air and so on, all into consciousness, and related with that is the sight and sound and smell, and then all your bodily fluids and so on. So when we say subtle consciousness, subtle mind, this is mentioned talking about subtle mental formations, subtle minds. The subtle mind means when your gross 72,000 airs and elements has now subsided from operating, because there's no pranic air that is circulating in the body. All the gross has gone into subtle has gone to the very subtle, and so therefore even the 5 primary airs are no longer operative. They're only now entering into the 3 channels. The rasana and lalana is completely filled up by this, and the central channel is starting to open, because only the subtle wind are the mount on which these mental formations can experience. But of course, normal person who dying, they don't know these things. It's only a very trained yogi in advanced completion stage practice meditation, because they are able to meditate themselves and see themselves as their body as a vein. It's just many kind of nadis or rivers of veins, basically. And so body is just vein, and then those veins are basically very, very invisible syllables. And these syllables or the contents within the veins are fluid, called nectar. So the nectars. And those nectars that are in those nadis, veins, are only circulating with if there is air, if there is vital air, pranic air. Now, when all the pranic air circulation stops, so all the four gross body, vein, letter, element, nectar, essence, air, all of these four has now subsided or do no longer function, and therefore we do not have seeing or hearing or any of that to the outside world. We are dead. So as a result of that, you go through what we call 3 stages of luminosity before the actual clear light. That's appearing luminosity and radiance luminosity and near attainment luminosity. And then this is followed by the clear light itself, the luminosity itself, So we talked last week about the appearance luminosity, how 33 natural conception become what you call dissolved. And of course, during that time, majority of people do not recognize them. So the appearance luminosity makes them to see things not visually, but the consciousness in the body starting to see incredible things. That is only frightening. Most people are frightened by them because in life they're always so used to see things that frightens. So they are able to, they don't see it is total shutdown of their body. They see it's something external that's happening that's frightening. So they call the 3 precipices. If you don't recognize the appearance luminosity, radiance luminosity, and the near attainment luminosity, you fall the consciousness. The person person doesn't think it's conscious. He thinks his body, his whole body is falling into this. End up finding themselves in a very, very, perilous road, and then end up in a very precipices, in a very deep white or deep red or deep black ravines, and where they feel chased and wanted by many creatures and people, and they're always running, and they end up finding themselves into impossible places and get stuck there, and they go through very, very fearful hallucinatory experiences. So these are the adverse effect of not realizing these natural conceptions. But if one knows the natural conceptions, if one is very, very unattached to the material world and knows the world is an illusion, and oneself is an illusion, as therefore one is no longer investing any attachment to illusory things as real or impermanent things as long-lasting or no self as a real self. If one didn't invest any of that habitually in life, of course, there wouldn't be any of these fearful precipices. There will instead be clear light, the appearance luminosity, and then they will be able to realize the actual, elementally speaking, when we go through the appearance luminosity and the radiance luminosity. Appearance luminosity means that everything becomes so manifest, so bright, and that this appearance becomes so vivid that the mind finds very difficult because it's so brightness. They say the pre-death light, Of course, the clinical death has occurred, but immediately after that, there is this dawning of bright appearances. This bright appearance therefore agitate the most people, and they get frightened, and they still think they are them, and so they don't recognize them. But a practitioner who have a witness, who actually also meditate every day with his generation stage as well as completion stage practices, because of his generation stage, he never see himself as a person or the body or speech, mind, all of these things. He doesn't see them as a real body. He sees body has been replaced in the form of deity, which is not a form. His speech is not ordinary for speech, but it's just sound on the emptiness, and so this enables the practice of generation stage enables them to de-identify themselves, and then completion stage practice, which even the deitiness of themselves they do not get that. They see the deity also as empty. So then when they see the emptiness of deity. They are therefore using the very deity to realize emptiness. The deity is not to realize deitiness. Deity is to realize emptiness of self and phenomena. Deity is phenomena, and self is the person. So when we have service to enable oneself to realize the emptiness of self, emptiness of phenomena through generation stage and completion stage. Now these two words, generation and completion stage, in Vajrayana is actually a tool to realize the selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena, which is quite importantly spoken about in the philosophy, Mahayana philosophy. Because Vajrayana is a facilitated philosophy of Mahayana to quickly realize emptiness. It's not any objective, but to quicken and swiftен the pace of realizing emptiness of self. So, the greater acquaintance the person has to these two practices, they will greatly benefit. But here, for our sake, even there are a few among us trying to do generation completion stage, our actual experience of being able to recognize these 40 natural conceptions. That's the second one. Second lot is the 40 natural conceptions of radiance luminosity. The radiance luminosity, the appearance luminosity is the 33 subtle natural conceptions we talked last week. Now we're going through the list of the second, which is the 40 natural conceptions of radiance luminosity, as it stays stated in the 5 stages, Panchakrama. It simply lists them. They're enumerated as all to do with the very, very subtle versions of desire. Subtle versions. First is desire. Desire in this case is a what do you do when you have desire? You are desiring to attain what you haven't got. Even at that stage of a dying person, he has many things he has not attained. So therefore, that is that it may not be something visual or gross, I would call adventitious consciousness, like the 5 senses, but still there is a lot of longing, wanting to get something that he hasn't had or he still wants. So that's the desire. When we talk about the desire, afflicted desire among the root affliction, that's a visual. That could be visual. That could be auditory. That could be, sense organ related. Sense organ related or particular object related. You want that, or you want to go there, or you want. So it's all object induced. But here it is not. It's just, it could be very, very subtle. It could be very, very subtle. The mind still mounts on, this desire still mounts on the wind. It's a subtle wind in the body. And it is therefore called desire, and still seeking to fulfill or attain what it hasn't attained. The second is called adherence. is adherence, meaning that one has attained something before, and one is still attached to it. So you can see, we can talk about when somebody's dying, they're still attached to many of us, So they have friendship, they have daughters, they have son, they have house, they have job, they have a good degree of things they did in this mundane life. But when they're dying, they're still attached to it, They still have attachment to such things, But they are not communicative to outside world. Nor can anybody knows what we attach to. But they themselves are still attached to things that they previously desire, and they got that what they desire, and now it may be only a illusion. They may be not. The thing is not there anymore. Thing is not something they can go and have it. But still, they couldn't switch the mind off the attachment to it. So adherence. So that's the second. Third, fourth, fifth are a joy. A kind of joy of having seen or heard or obtained or status or position or whatever, an attractive object. And this has 3 degrees of joy. 3 degrees, of joy of having whatever we had, So it's very subtle than attachment to it, Very much more subtle than desiring of it. So desire is one, and then adherence of what one had from desiring is another, and the third, fourth, and fifth are 3 degrees of joy in relation to what one had. These things are very, very subtly, but still playing on the subtle wind on the mind. Subtle wind of the mind, because mind is still there. So joy of having seen, or having been, or having done, or having heard, or tasted, or owned, or whatever the case might be. That there could be a lesser, moderate, and great joy about something. So we could actually be experiencing that, but for the advanced practitioner could be in those states. They are not experiencing death. They could be experiencing those. But ordinary people are not experiencing. They are falling into the precipices because of this radiance. So radiance meaning for them, every kind of phenomena that they appear become a cause of them fear of losing them or losing them. So they have that adverse perception of those. So that's the third, fourth, fifth, the 3 degrees of joy with things that one has previously have obtained. Now, sometimes you could also see, can we experience these 18 natural conceptions when we are not dead, when we are alive? In your deep meditation, you can, In a deep meditation, there's talk about ecstasy, there's a kind of joy or lightness, and they talk about rapture and all of that. So that also means when we deep meditation, we could also, of course, go in a very subtle, deep consciousness. During that, we could have such what they call samadhi of meditation. You can have an experience in the meditation that is very, very pliant and pleasant and joyful, because our consciousness is so subtle that it is not craving something or wanting something, projecting anything, but in its very calm and peaceful, subtle state of consciousness, it could actually experience these things as well. The 6th one is rapture. Rapture is a bliss of mind, and bliss of the mind. It's a little bit different with the joy. Joy is more like a mental. The bliss seems like a kind of, it is still staying continuously with you, The rapture has a feeling of not a kind of a emotional joy, but as a kind of salient feature of your mentality. So that is also a result of having obtained something good among good, that your mind is experiencing rapture. So good advanced practitioners, you can see they can actually go to that subtle mental consciousness to actually engage. So therefore they're really peaceful. They're peaceful because they don't have now the ordinary physical worldly kind of corporal suffering anymore. And they instead are now going through the experience these 80 natural conceptions mind has stored, and they just, as before your consciousness leaves the body, one is actually experience this rapture for us. Seventh one is called ecstasy, which is the very rapturous mind's experience that is repeating again and again. So the difference between the rapture and ecstasy is rapture has a particular duration, whereas ecstasy is repeatable rapture. Repeatable rapture. We have a sadness, a repeatable sadness. we do that one better. so repeatable, repeated rapture, experiencing the ecstasy again and again. Almost you can prolong it. So that's why when you do meditate, you try to prolong the bliss, don't you? You try to experience. These are all secret transcendental wisdom, empowerment, and those things. These are all advanced completion stage practice. In fact, if you are able to subtly access it. Even in those practices, you try to visualize developing bliss in one part of chakra, either in ascending order or descending order. So if you don't rush your practice, but you slowly do quality, the whole idea is that you can repeat that rapture and spread and prolong the bliss and rapture. And number 8 is amazement. Amazement is a which is thinking of something that has never occurred before. But when you do, it brings this wonder. And so it never occurred to your mind, but when it did, there is a dawning of a wonder. So these are very, very subtle experience. Number 9 is excitement. Excitement is which a mind distracted upon seeing something attractive. So the subtle mind is, of course, this is not visual mind seeing thing, but the mind seeing even without visual organ, because the mind is just as capable to do everything by itself without any aid of the 5 operative consciousness. So it has this perception of seeing something so attractive, and all of a sudden the mind reaches to the height of becoming very excited. Why do we do the prayer? Someone died, or someone nearby, someone who's dead. They're doing all these prayers in order to induce these auspicious coincidences, so these natural conceptions are recognized and induced and maybe prolonged in experience. That's why how able a person is to stay very present in the slowness of the post-clinical death is actually relishing these various natural conceptions, experiencing them without hurrying them, and very, most dying people very hard. These things come so quickly, and they misinterpret. They become hallucinated in seeing various things, and they find themselves stuck in a precipice of red and white and black, and they lose it. Whereas practitioners who is very conscious of the illusoriness of the world, they don't worry the illusion is dying, So for them to confirm the illusoriness of illusion is a spectacle, basically, that they've been told before. Now they're actually witnessing. They are able to witness. They are able to witness and meet the clear light, mother clear light, because he or she has been trained with the childlike clear light, and these are precursor to the recognition of the mother clear light, and hence the excitement instead of the fear and other things for the one who has no completion stage practices up his sleeves. And the 10th is satisfaction, which is a thought contented with the object. So the mind is able to have lots of contentment in that natural conception, because it is not intimidated by the desire or deludedness of the natural conception that is related with the affliction, but it's the opposite of that, because of this amazing contentment. Practitioners who have lots of contentment in life, such as precious human rebirth, triple gem, bodhicitta, right view, what else they need? Probably not. So if they are so satisfied, of course they will be able to rekindle their satisfaction with these things, instead of fear of losing and parting from illusory things. So you can see the subtle consciousness is very subtle, that it is not likelihood of its misinterpreting any of the perceptions are precipices are not there, but because these precipices do not manifest to the person who is in this state of recognizing the natural conceptions. Those 10, and then the 11th, 12th, and 13th is respectively called embracing, kissing, and sucking. It says, which a mind desiring to do those three activities, because when when the person is in the desirous world, people always like to embrace, you know. It's just even if it's just a nice hug, you know, and that stays strong in the mind. So that it's one of the activities people like to do, you know. I don't know how much people really want to kiss, but but embracing seems much more palatable. Anyway, embracing, kissing, and sucking, which are minds desiring to do those three activities. So whatever it is, because remember, the mouth is the most desirous kind of part of the human body, you know. So therefore, people always putting something in here all the time. You know, it's not just talking about kissing and so on, but just always trying to put in here so that you can just suck the banana. Like the banana fritters. always try to please the lips and tongue. So even though lips have totally gone dry, person did, but still the subtle craving for those things still manifests, you know. It's a you could see a lot of people, dead people, their hands are like this. They clench their hand like they just really wish they were holding somebody. Even though, you know, even you can hold them, but they got no real life in them. They're just still. Often they're just as if they want to hold on to something. You know, so the consciousness is always desiring to do either or all these three activities. It's still the habitual pattern. 14th is stability, which is an unfluctuating continuum mind. So the mind has now yielded us some kind of unprecedented stability. during the normal life, the mind is so sensitive to it. Anything could excite, anything can disturb, anything can raise fear or hope or whatever. But now there is almost unfluctuating continuum of the mind. So you can see the stability of the meditative state. If one has had in completion generation stage, this will enable the person to experience the natural conception of stability in its intrinsic nature, the natural stability of the mind, because it doesn't have any fluctuating stimuli that are domains of the sense doors. That is domain of the sixth mental consciousness either, because the meditator has totally stabilized the mind, you can see how fluctuating our mind is. You can sit there and you notice something straight away. It just shift your mind to that, and divert your attention to or by it to somewhere. Whereas others could be doing something, they could be very focused. Their subtle mind is so stable in their whatever their duty, or maybe they're meditating loving kindness. If they're meditating on loving kindness, then of course they will not be agitated by anger. If they have a very good stability, so subtle that the mind is able to mount, the thought is able to mount the mind to not causable to be fluctuated. Stability. There's a lot of stillness when somebody's died in the room, So because there is no actual adventitious consciousness operating or craving anything like that. But if the one who is not settled, who had the clinical death, they probably would be going through the trauma of experiencing the precipices. These are what we call radiance. 15th is called diligence. Which is application of one's effort into enthusiastic activity of virtue. So you can see the subtle mind of the person in that state of being able to recognize the natural conception of diligence. They are actually able to apply their thoughts to the virtue, and hence not distractible by those hallucinatory experiences. But that's if they are the kind of practitioner who has that level of awareness. But ordinaries are exactly opposite. They are frightened, and they are really completely agitated, and so their mind will be driven opposite. 16th is pride, which is thinking superiority of oneself over others. So this is not the deluded pride as we were talking about among the 6 root afflictions, but still the thinking of I and me and my importance. That's very hard to forget, So even the deity yoga, where you try to have a divine pride, as one, and I am the deity, I am the Buddha, that kind of mind. That kind of subtle consciousness pride. 17th is the activity, which has a sense of needing to complete a thing. So always as if one hasn't done something well, and one needs to do it well, going back to it or whatever it is. Sense of having to accomplish an activity. You wouldn't be a person if you haven't got that kind of sensitivity. Of course, when you're dying, and how much of that activity will be useful, or how can you direct? So you can see much of these are very, very subtle. And 18th is stealing, which is wanting to steal things, wanting to take things. So these are, of course, misconceptions in that deluded state. Even though one could not take anything, one couldn't walk anything, there's still the subtle mind of wanting to take. It's just you could probably see it's more of a subtle propensities. Now that it was suppressed, you wanted to take that, but you didn't take that. It wasn't a good time to take. It wasn't convenient to take because everybody was watching. But really, I wish I could pinch that one. So that imprint is that imprint is still lingering. So, you wouldn't believe how tricky our mind is. People call, I will pinch it. I pinched it. They think it's not stealing. And 19th is power, which is wanting to destroy others' power, others' ability, or others' skill, or try to overwhelm the power. It's just a very desire-orientated mind. It maybe you don't need to do anything, but you just don't want them to succeed. You don't want them to finish. You don't want them to get there. This kind of subtle mind. And 20th is enthusiasm, which is mind captivating oneself to do the virtuous path, follow the path of virtue. 21st, 22nd, 23rd is 3 degrees of foolhardiness, which is mind wanting to engage in non-virtue out of conceit. So, which means a lesser degree of conceit, and moderate degree of conceit, and great degree of conceit is 22nd, 21, 22nd, and 23rd, 3 types of foolhardiness. And 24th is vehemence, which is wanting to dispute, without a cause. Always seeking for an argument. You can see that some people got a lot out of being argumentative, even though they don't get anything from it. They just couldn't live. They're so vehement to do that. And nobody can see the point, but he can. He thinks there is something. So it's this. 25th is flirtations, which is wanting to be playful or put on an air when seeing someone attractive. When seeing someone attractive. So these are very, very subtle, mental kind of suppressed kind of craving or attention or wanting to flirt. Of course, when one is dead, in that level, one is dead already. But this kind of natural conception still is embedded and laid as a propensities. These propensities are now evaporating, so to speak, because previously these probably were suppressed. And 26th is animosity, which is a mind of resentment. So there's sometimes we don't even remember even an ordinary. So one of the 20 secondary afflictions is resentment, but we don't really remember we have that resentment until we meet it. So in this case, this mind of resentment is very, very subtle. Very, very subtle, but these things now they are all rising up basically, because they've been suppressed all these times. 27 is virtue, which is wanting to make effort to do virtuous action, and so there's all these natural conceptions. We want to do good. We have resentment, All of these things, quite a lot of them have never had a good run, if you like, but they are not sort of died out. They still are embers, under the ash, so to speak. Because there are no stimuli to actualize them, but now all of the gross things have evaporated, and now these things are manifesting, and quite adversely to most people, these things are causing them to have hallucinatory, many times exaggerated form of this, become the very fearful precipices where they find themselves stuck. They still want to do virtues, but they're stuck in those in perilous places. And 29th is the truth, which is wanting to speak the truth, in a way that does not pervert the meaning and allows others to discern it. So there is this kind of wish. Maybe we want to speak the truth. We want people we want to have people who always tells the truth, and so on. But in real life, it's quite the opposite. Real life, quite the opposite. Most sentient beings are completely opposite to what their deep yearnings are. And the yearnings are unpaid, sort of solicited, but something else habitually takes over. So now this deep-seated truth-seeking mind manifests in a very subtle consciousness level. Number 30 is untruth, which is wanting to speak in a way that perverts the meaning, prevents others discerning it. Yeah, so exactly. There's always, these two are mutually inclusive, because truth and untruth, and virtue and non-virtue, and all these things are not one thing doesn't happen by itself. It always has. If you have become very virtuous, it's been because you've been not virtuous before. So you can't become virtuous if you already been virtuous. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if you're virtuous. People say, "Oh, I stopped smoking," means he's been smoking a long time. So he only stopped smoking because he has been smoking. Then he can say then he said, "I stopped smoking." Yeah.
What was number 28?
Huh? 28 we haven't covered yet. Did we? No, not yet. No, we're talking about 27th. Huh? Oh, no, we jumped, did we?
Yeah.
Did we jump? Oh, yeah,
We missed 28.
20. Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Oh, 28. Okay, good. See, I tell you. I think I'm just following each number very clearly, and then I'm not. See? Very...
wanting to make effort to be bad.
After wanting to make it to virtue. I want to be so good at this.
28 is verbal clarity.
Very good one.
You become so verbose, you don't know how unclear you are speaking. Yeah, verbal clarity, which is wanting to make an effort. Sorry, I'm jumping. Which is wanting to speak to others so that others can understand. Yeah, verbal clarity, wanting to speak so that others can understand. You don't practice verbal clarity to yourself, do you? I want you to understand, and you can look in the mirror and talk to yourself. Maybe you can try that so that you understand yourself, When somebody tells that, you don't want to listen. You can practice verbal clarity by telling yourself, I want you to speak so that you really understand me. Verbal clarity, okay? Okay, that's 28. Yeah, 29th we covered. 20th and 30th we covered, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, good. Because it was bad before. When you're missing lines and numbers, it's awful, And some people who are taking deliberate notes, they can tell they miss it. But others who are not taking notes, they will be just as blurred as me. Now we are all back to square one. Everybody's clear. Everybody's clear. It's all here, but these modern books are so tiny print. I don't know why they print so small. They want to sell this big book, but the print is so small. Anyway, so that's 30th as untruth, yeah? 30th is untruth, which is wanting to speak in a way that perverts the meaning and prevents others discerning it. Yeah, so deliberately. There's quite a lot of these things, sometimes with good intention. You just didn't want to know. Doctor doesn't want to tell his wife that he's going to die. He's gone to heaven. He's gone to heaven. You see, always people say to the babies, they never tell the parents die. They say, "Mom's gone to heaven." Yeah, which is wanting to speak in a way to pervert the meaning and prevent others discerning it for maybe very good reasons. You don't want them to know, and because it will be too difficult for them, and you don't want to say it for whatever reasons. So it doesn't mean that the factual truth is one thing, but motivationally what not wanting to tell is maybe quite good motivation. So, and the mind has to be very subtle to know to whom it is okay to tell, to whom not is okay to tell. 31st is certainty, which is fully trusting in the meditational deity. So this is This very, very much shows if a person who is a deity yoga practitioner, and then the awareness of the deity, they should not question. They should be very certain that the deity that they are trusting the mind in as a meditation deity is the one that they should continue to hold their grip in, knowing that is that. When the mind is, no, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I'm not that, this is not my deity, I want this deity, But even if you do multiple deities, if you see them as all one, but when you do that particular deity, you see that as the deity of all, a combination of all, then we have the certainty. Quite a lot of people feel really divided between deity yogas. They think if I do this, I'm doing sort of upsetting Vajrayogini and its lineage. As the Vajrayogini lineage is very about to collapse because you're not practicing. So cute, they really wanted to not offend Vajrayogini lineage, and they wanted to do this Yamantaka stuff, or whatever, They have this bias to and bias against, but if a practitioner who really knows the purpose of all deity, they don't have that kind of a bias to, except to the deitiness of self, but deity of emptiness, deity of emptiness of self is that deity. So any deity will do, as long as the purpose of knowing that this is to forget the ego and to replace the self by this visual image of the enlightened one, a visual image of the emptiness. If one sees that, then that certainty really helps for the person to not get frightened. Because you have only fear when you come back to thinking, I'm me, the old me, the deluded me. Divine pride or some degree. 32 is non-grasping, which is not wanting to hold onto the object. Not wanting to hold onto the object, non-grasping. In the subtle kind of consciousness, it's much easier to not to develop grasping, because most of the things that you see are not there. No, most of the things you hear, everything that you hear, see, smell, taste, touch, not there to be grasped. And then the invisibility and inaudibility of things is even a greater cause of realizing no self. That's why no form, no smell, no taste is mentioned first. Only when you know the no form, no sound, no smell, then they say no eye, no ear, no nose later. And vice versa. They just one helps the other. So non-grasping. And so non-grasping is 32. 33 is being a giver. Which is wanting to give away, wanting to give things, wanting to be the giver. Things, small things to big possessions, wanting to give. Yeah, you couldn't. It's very easy to when your object of recipient is very important to you, or the thing that you really want to give is important for you to give. And when you want to be the giver, then this wanting to give is very strong. You want to queue up to be the giver. Wanting to be the giver. But when you're attached to some things, you don't want to give. You don't want to queue up. It's amazing, yeah? So it's interesting. So the subtle mind can quickly want to give, And 34 is exhortation, which is wanting to motivate others who are lazy, Yeah. I mean, you can't see anything wrong with that. You wanted to sort of encourage people. You wanted to encourage people. Subtle mind. You wanted to exhort other people to do good, so that they're not sort of unproductive with their time or energy. 34th. 35th is bravery, which is wanting to be victorious over enemy, that is mental affliction and so on. Yeah. So of course you can have that. You wanted to so brave to overcome your weaknesses, your problems or whatever. And in that case, in the case of dying, you just decide not to be afraid of death. And teaching says, don't be afraid of death. You say, yes. You try very hard to practice. Wanting to be very, you don't want to be intimidated by death, and you don't want to have attachment, and you're so brave. You're real, you don't even mind when it may come, because it's not you're not fighting to delay. You're brave. You're so brave. Yeah. So when we talk about not realizing these natural conceptions is opposite. Opposite of bravery is cowardness. Opposite of certainty is uncertainty. So all these things then whips the mind opposite. Instead of realizing the subtle natural conceptions, it becomes quickly lose the balance. 36 is shamelessness, which is engaging in non-virtue rather than shunning it for personal or religious reasons. One doesn't have shame or the consequence or harmful consequences from it, engaging in things that doesn't seem to have any sense of shame. So shame generally is the shamefulness or shamefulness. Shamelessness is already one of the secondary afflictions. Of course, if you have root affliction, secondary affliction, what makes 84,000 afflictions if it wasn't the subtle ones are counted? So they're bound to be subtle version of shamelessness, subtle version of resentment, even when you are passing away. Even for good practitioners, for them to be very stable, because you can see that when the person's dying, their body looks awful. But when they're realizing these natural conceptions, the body comes bright. and so that's what it is, because they're not disturbed within. They have some kind of a stock of virtue. Propensities of virtues are now enlivened by it, and because of that, they're not shaken by the reality, but they're actually softened by the situation. Now, the 37 is pretense, which is deceiving others with fabrications. So, when the dying person is able to see that all the signs, he is able to use this pretense that he is so familiar with, because there's no one to deceive but himself, Previously, he may have succeeded deceiving others to no advantage to himself. Now he knows that. Because of that presence is not going to be utilized. Not going to be utilized with fabrication or deceiving others, because there's no others. 38 is malice, which is training in ill will. Training in ill will. Try to create causes to keep the malice and ill will going. 39 is brutality, which is deliberately make people suffer, injuring. And the 40th is a trickery, which is being dishonest. So these are the 40 what we call natural conceptions related with the radiance, clear light or radiance. The radiance meaning it just becomes so brightly illuminated in the form of appearances, depending to, if you have realized this age-in-age conception, it would be the radiant red color, radiant red and bright white, and these two now will collapse, when the white and red elements collapse, because when the white is rising and there's an appearance, white appearance, when the red is rising up. So the opposite, we don't have to go over that. But when the white element, one element which is white, one element which is red, when these two are descending and ascending in the order, then this luminosity of appearance and the luminosity of radiance occur. But when both of these now collapses, meaning come and drop meet at the heart chakra, at that time, then it becomes the last one, which is the near attainment, blackout. We just call near attainment because it is like eve of attainment. Near attainment means eve of attainment of what? Clear light. So that finishes those 40. Now the third one is the 7 natural conceptions of eve of attainment of clarity, and luminous imminence. Like luminous imminence. That's the translator is luminous imminence. Imminence means it is definitely going to happen, isn't it? So it means just eve of attainment, near attainment. The Tibetan word is nyer top. Nyer means nearly, and top means attainment, near attainment. And so this has 7 natural conceptions, because we had 33 and 40, so that's 73. Yeah, 73 is gone so far. 73. Then 7 remaining ones are called the eve of attainment or near attainment, near top luminosity, and they are first one is indifference. You can see the level. Indifferent which is in between, neither wanting nor wanting. So there is almost lull, almost like a equanimity in the subjective consciousness of the unconscious consciousness. Because it's not any of the conscious adventitious consciousness we're referring to, because there's no seeing and none of that. And all those 73 natural conceptions were not indifferent. They were still quite this way or that way, isn't it? Now one reaches to the indifference level, which is the first of the 7 last natural conceptions. Still the mind is there, subtle mind is still there, and one of the subtlest of 7 natural conceptions is indifference. So indifference is neither wanting nor wanting. It's like a pure equanimity. It's an equanimity. This is why very difficult to be in equanimity. Basically, you have to die. You just have to become log. No wonder Shantideva said, let me become log. It's very difficult to be log because you want to be a tree. Indifference. Sometimes, of course, we meditate. If your meditation reaches to a certain level of good, it almost everything that is going this way or not going that way is just don't really have a damn about anything. You have no great wanting this way or that way, and you don't sing praise for you having it either. Because the logs don't say I'm log. Logs don't say I have become log. Indifference, yeah. I think some yogis definitely reach that level. That's why they can just sit in the cold or sit under a tree without feeling hungry. They have no craving for this or that. They are just indifference. I'm sure Buddha would have reached those levels. And otherwise, how could your gross physical body survive? You must have an amazing subtle mental power that you can be indifferent. Second is forgetfulness, which is the deterioration of mindfulness. So there is almost nothing to remember. It's just quite a relief, actually. I don't know why people are afraid, they're worried when they're forgetting. I think the whole Buddhist mindfulness practice is helping people to forget themselves. Ultimately realize forgetfulness. We forget everything. It's really good. I'm just saying, I believe it, not that I have. Forgetfulness. Which is deterioration of mindfulness. Most people suffering is because they're so mindful of them. Poor me, poor that. I didn't have this, I didn't get that. If they learn to forget what they didn't get, who didn't love them, or what they don't have, if they forget all of that, it will be the natural conception of forgetfulness. And the third is error, which is a thought such as apprehending a mirage to be water and so on. Yeah. So the mind actually sees things as erroneously. But of course it doesn't know that. Doesn't seem too subtle to me. This is happening all the time. Most of the time, we are erring. But when you are at that level, we are talking about quite a different level. I think it's a very subtle level. And the fourth one is non-speaking. Which is not wanting to speak. Of course, you can tell from the mouth that there's nothing there. No tongue, no teeth. All of them are no longer operative, and they're just shut down. Non-speaking. And fifth one is disenchantment, which is a mental weariness. Yeah, so therefore this mind is just exhausted, I think, from being mind. You know, because that's the kind of because it's near attainment. You know, you can't have a mind if you want to be in clear light, because you have to be luminously free of weariness. And sixth one is laziness, which is to have no delight in virtue. Yeah, so there is no energy whatsoever in virtue. And the seventh and last is doubt, which is to be of two minds. So this division of seven last natural conceptions is the last of the three groups, and it is said that this could be further subdivided into three levels of subtlety, based on whether through the force of your winds, or the strength of conception movement towards the object is lesser, and force of conception movement towards the winds could be middling, and force of the movement could be great. So that shows you can have 3 degrees of subdivision in all of these 18 natural conceptions. So regarding that, in the reverse order, from the clear light, there arises a luminous immanence. So first is, if you reverse that, first is immanence, which is near attainment. From that, there arises luminous radiance. From that, there arises luminous appearance. So you could be reversing that. Following upon which there is increasing movement of winds, Increasing movement of winds. These are subtle winds, These are subtle winds, and resulting in the arising of those conception and the nature of the 3 luminosities. So this amazing activity is still happening. That's why it's not a consciousness hasn't left the body, because it could be going through many subtle levels in forward order or reverse order. Yeah, with regard to those 18 natural conceptions, when any of the 33 arise, for instance, it is that trace of the luminous appearance, because 33 is luminous appearance, remember, and 40 is luminous radiance. When any of the 40 arise, it is the trace of luminous radiance. So now the practitioner is very cognizant of that when they are in tukdam, when they are in a kind of post-death meditative state. When any of the 7 arise, it is the trace, means sign, of the near attainment, luminosity of near attainment. Therefore, it is taught that the conceptions are a result of these 3 luminosities. These 3 luminosities because there's none of the obscurations are present. Desire, hatred, ignorance. Now, gross desire, hatred, ignorance are not present. Because of that, this 3 luminosity is recognized by practitioners. But for non-practitioner, instead of recognizing these as the luminosities, they will be exaggerated in form of precipices of red rocks and white rocks and black rocks and many kind of ferocious creatures chasing, barking, and those things. So most people chances of realizing the clear light is not that great, not that great. But for the practitioner, when they are able to now recognize this natural conception in the order of 33 and the 40 and the 7, so these 3 are to do with the gross 3 afflictions, and ignorance is last because. So that's why calling them the natural 3 luminosities. The radiance, the appearance luminosity, radiance luminosity, and near attainment, which in Tibetan we call Nang, Che, Top. So this characterizes the nature of these three luminosities. How they characterize the three luminosities, they do not characterize them by virtue of being the same same thing as them, in a way that being bulbous is taken to be defining characteristic of a pot, for instance, rather as in a house with a raven, where the presence of raven is characterized the house, an ontologically distinct characterizer posited as the defining characteristics. Moreover, the fact that the conception in the nature of the three luminosity have three levels of movements of wind, the wind we're talking about, subtle prana, the moderate, lesser, and great, indicates that their causes, three luminosities, also have three levels of movements of wind, lesser, moderate, and great. The differentiation of the conception into three classes is not due to the difference in their object or their way of apprehending the object. Rather, it is due to the difference in the force of the subtle wind of having three levels of strength, lesser, moderate, and great, to move the conception towards the object, away from the objects. And these differences in the force of the winds arise owing to the mind cognizant of the three luminosities. So recognition of luminosity has to be cognizant. So therefore, these 18 indicative natural conceptions include all the three ethical valences: virtuous, non-virtuous, neutral. And since they include both conceptual and non-conceptual mental states, they should not be understood to refer only to conceptual thoughts that apprehend the object as associatable with words. So these 18 natural conceptions, which is only spoken about in the tantric texts, shouldn't be treated to be too much an esoteric stuff. It actually naturally happens to everyone by virtue of going through the stages of disintegration of the gross bodily elements. Then it naturally happens to everyone. It's just question is whether the mind is so peaceful in accepting the gradual dissolution of the body, not only during the gradual dissolution of the body, every day then one knows I'm not body. The more familiar he or she is conceptually and not really deluded in the gross affliction in grasping to body as me or mine and so on, the more frequently his or her mind is so subtle in seeing no self, ultimately, but only temporarily, merely label one. If you just take things merely labeled, it's so light-hearted. It's already light. Already light. There's nothing serious or anything. Nothing is too serious. When you know everything is merely labeled, everything is just tokenism. Everything is just for the sake of sake of appearance. When you have this kind of absence of gross attachment and clinging to dualistic things, your operative consciousness still interacts with everyone, and for whatever level that they need you to operate or relate. But for you, it's really, really no problem. Nothing is a problem because there's no real problem. There's no real problem, don't you think so? I mean, how could there be a real problem when there's nothing is real? So when your mind is very light, like that, subtle, then you could actually have these kind of natural conceptions, very subtle natural conception. Always, you can be very light. Your prana could be flowing very brightly in your body, tantalizing, or in body making you feel rapturous. And your body doesn't suffer the gross samsara, even if the bodily, ordinary corporal body will still go. The mind itself doesn't think it's me, or to me, or by me. It doesn't have these strong gross things. So you do not have this kind of a instantaneous skill of recognizing these 18 natural conceptions at the moment of death, unless your mind is habituated towards that direction every day. And that's the teaching, that's the practice, that's the sadhanas. Try to point us towards that direction. Of course, there's a lot more on these texts about the subtle and very subtle mind. We talked about subtle mind thus far with the 18 natural conceptions, according to Panchakrama. There's even more subtle and very subtle mind in wind. As for identifying subtle and very subtle minds and winds, the luminous appearance, the luminous radiance, and luminous near-attainment, along with the winds that are their mounts, are considered to be subtle. So when you're recognizing luminous appearance, it is the subtleness of the wind and mind is now recognizing these subtle things. The primordial mind with the wind, that is its mount, is considered to be very subtle. Yeah. When our consciousness, in the first time when it enters into the mind, it was very, very subtle. It doesn't have any of the shadows or any of the awareness or identity of itself and of the past life. It cannot have that to allow him to take rebirth, for instance. It has to be very subtle. Subtle, however, in general, three types of consciousness: the luminous appearance, the luminous radiance, the luminous near-attainment, are very subtle. So these Nangche Topsum we were talking about, these are very, very subtle. The reason they are considered to be very subtle is that their dominant condition, the mental sense faculty, which is the sixth mental sense faculty, is subtle. Why? Because it's subtler than the five sensory consciousness, isn't it? Five sensory consciousness is gross, It needs gross sense organ. But the mental consciousness itself is relatively subtler than the other consciousness. So therefore, if these natural conceptions have to use the sixth sense mental consciousness, which is subtle, then of course that which recognizes subtle has to be very subtle. So their mental conception wherein gross appearance have subsided. Gross appearance refers to sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, subsided, in dependence on the very slight movement of the mount, because the eye sense organ is no longer operative to move towards form. For instance, ear sense organ doesn't have to move towards the sound. May be coming, but nothing, no drum, no drum, No reception. No reception. Wi-Fi is not on. No reception. Subside in dependence on the very slight movement of the mount, the subtle life-sustaining wind. Subtle life-sustaining wind. Which is the prana, very subtle prana. So those practitioners who is actually able to sit in meditation, even without food and so on, they are using this subtle wind and subtle mind, which is not needing to rely on gross object to sustain or to stimulate that, but is rather stimulated by the subtle mind to keep the subtle wind going. So both the subtle mind and the subtle wind operate inseparably as one entity. consciousness is the part to which the object appears, and the wind is the part that moves towards the object. Having given the example of how a cripple with clear sight and a blind man with strong legs can travel as a pair from one place to another, the Kashmiri Master Lakshmi mentions in his commentary on the 5 stages, Panchakrama, that in the case of the consciousness, moving and traveling is done by the wind that is its mount, and seeing the object is done by the consciousness. There's no way for these two to be separated, as explained in the very text. Having explained the 3 types of mind, the luminous appearance, luminous radiance, and luminous near attainment. So it talks about how concomitant they need to be simultaneous, the mind and wind. Even for now, for you to hear the sound, your attention and your hearing has to go together. But your attention goes somewhere, even your hearing in front, you couldn't actually hear it, So that's why the simultaneousness of these two is required. Thus, the defining characteristic of these 3, the luminous appearance, luminous radiance, and near attainment luminous, presented in sources such as the above texts, are as follows. The definition of the mind of luminous appearance is a mental consciousness that occurs between the movement and dissolution of conception that has an inner sign there, not appearing any gross dualistic appearance, apart from the dawning of purely empty white appearance. So the appearance is therefore empty white appearance, like a clear autumn sky filled with moonlight. As for the etymology, it is called luminous appearance, due to its appearing like a moonlight, with the winds that moves the conception have dissolved. And it is called empty as well because it is empty of 80 conceptions together with their winds. So then, of course, now the appearance, radiance, and near attainment has now culminated to the realization of clear light, radiance, white light, clear light appearance. So then, that's why the Aryadeva's lamp on the compendium of practice, Charya Pradipa, I think, says, what are the defining characteristics of the luminous appearance? Without body or speech, it has a nature without a shape. Having the nature of luminosity, it perceives all things without exception, just as the illumination from moonbeam pervades the stainless autumn sky. Thus, it is the luminous appearance. It is the first emptiness, the luminous appearance of the wisdom that is ultimate mind of enlightenment. That's the first one. The definition of the luminous mind of luminous radiance, that's the second one, is a mental consciousness that occurs between the movement and the dissolution of conception that has an inner sign of there not appearing any gross dualistic appearance apart from a purely empty red appearance. So now how all of the gross, dense light become now subtle light. And so it's the light is there, but it's empty light. One is empty white light, and next is empty red light. Like a clear autumn sky filled with the sunlight. As for the etymology, it is called luminous radiance due to its appearing very radiant, like sunlight, and is called very empty as well because it is empty of luminous appearance together with its wind. Yeah. So now there's no empty luminosity, white one. It's now the radiance one. Same text says, what are the defining characteristics of luminous radiance? Without a body or speech, it has no shape, and it is free of subject and object. It is very clear and perceives all things without exception as stainless in nature. Just the illumination from sunbeam pervades the entire autumn sky. It is the second completely excellent mind of enlightenment. The definition of the red luminous near attainment is a mental consciousness that occurs between the movement and dissolution of conception that has an inner sign of there not appearing any gross dualistic appearance apart from the dawning of purely empty black appearance. Empty black appearance. Like a clear autumn sky filled with dense darkness of space. As for the etymology, it is called luminous near attainment because it appears very unclear, like the darkness of space at midnight, and because it is drawing near to clear light. Yeah. It is called great empty as well because it is empty of the luminous radiance together with the winds. So, because when the next one comes, the former one phases out. Yeah. Because it is unclear, it is also dubbed as ignorance, the name of one facet of luminous eminence. So when you don't recognize, it's ignorance. When you recognize, it is near attainment. Same text says, what is the luminous near attainment? Likewise, without body, speech, it has the form of an absence, as is characteristic of space, naturally pervading like the midnight darkness, subtle and selfless, with the life force stilled. It is motionless, without awareness, unmoving, an entrance way dependent on the seed syllable of speech. It is called thoroughly established. Nispanna. This luminous near attainment, which has the characteristics of ignorance, is the great empty. These are explained as the three types of consciousness. When the black luminous eminence dawns, conditioned by the winds having abruptly ceased, the object that appears arises in the image of blackness like a very pristine autumn sky filled with the blackness of the midnight. In the earlier part of this stage, mind has mindfulness. However, as mindfulness subjectivity gradually diminishes, mindfulness ceases to exist. To explain the very subtle primordial mind, Aryadeva's discernment of self-consecration stage says, earth dissolves into water, water dissolved into fire, fire enters into subtle element, wind dissolve into the mind dissolve into the mental factors. So now we're doing without any mental factors, and mental factors dissolve into ignorance. Now it's ignorant of mental factors. And that too dissolve into clear light. And whereupon all three samsaric existence completely cease. As this passage states, when it causes the wind of the wisdom of luminous near attainment, along with its mount, the wind, have dissolved, clear light dawns. Yeah, now this is clear light. One awakens out of the latter part of the luminous near attainment that is devoid of recollection, and without even the slightest element of gross dualistic appearance, an utterly pure and completely empty appearance arises. This resembles the natural color of the sky as dawn without any of the three faults, sunlight, moonlight, darkness, tainting the pristine autumn sky. This mental consciousness of the basic state that is supported by its mount, the very subtle primordial wind, is posited as the extremely subtle primordial mind of the basic state. It has the potentiality to give rise to all good qualities and faults. It is present in every sentient being's continuum, flowing continuously since beginner's time without a break for even a single moment. Its nature remains untainted by pollutants, since the pollutants arise from inappropriate attention to as their condition, as a condition, they are adventitious in that they are inseparable from the clear light mind. This primordial mind is the subtlest of any mind of the basic state. The very subtle primordial mind and its mount, the very subtle wind that is inseparable from that primordial mind, are a very subtle and inseparable mind, wind and mind, which are together referred to as a primordial body mind. The mind that is the mount of the primordial mind is called life-sustaining wind. In general, the two types of life-sustaining wind, gross and subtle, and the wind that is mount of the primordial mind is the subtle life-sustaining wind. The life-sustaining wind that is basis of extremely very subtle mind is explained as dwelling at the heart chakra. The heart center referred to here, as in case of human being, is situated at the central point between the two breasts and closer to the back. At this point, there are knots around the central channel, both above and below, which are knots formed by lalana and rasana. That's the right and left channel. Between these knots and within the channel, central channel, dwells the indestructible drop. This is what is being referred to as the heart in this context. The gross life-sustaining wind during the basic state flows in and out of the nostrils and dwells in the area of channel at the heart center, though it does not dwell inside the dhuti, the central channel, at the knot at the heart center explained above. The subtle life-sustaining wind is inseparable from the very subtle mind of the clear light. Being the mount of the mind, it is said to be a very subtle wind that is indestructible, that emanates light rays of 5 colors and dwells inside the dhuti, the central channel at the knot at the heart center. Condensed explanatory notes inquiry into 4 goddesses says, supremely subtle, merely half the size of a mustard seed, is the form of the drop that is basis the mind, always dwelling in the center of the heart and radiating magnificent rays of light. The innate wind that dwells in a central place after dissolution of the other wind is precisely this very subtle life-sustaining wind. So there's quite a bit understanding of the very subtle and very subtle mind and wind that is actually only discussed like this in very specific tantric texts, and of course here there's a good voluminous reading on that subject. Yeah. So we'll stop here. So we'll specifically go a little bit about that next week, about stages of dissolving the mind and wind and those of death, and the actual death. Because we are all going to do that, so it's quite a matter of great interest whether we can subtly do it or grossly grossly make it worse. Yeah, we have missed many times, so it's not the first time. This time we want to really try well. If you have some Vajrayana practice up your sleeves, which is very essential, if you are in initiate of practice and then do generation stage of one Anuttara Yoga daily practice, like He Vajra or Vajrayogini or Guya Samanja or Chakra Sambhara, and you are in good hands. And you just have to You just have to build the preliminaries. You have to do the generation stage, and slowly, of course, you do the completion stage. So without doing the tantric, the generation completion stage, it's very difficult to talk about the subtle mind and subtle wind, or actually know how to do them. Anyway, it's just first we have to hear it. So thank you, everyone. We have one more lesson next week. So until then, let's do the dedication merit so that we will be able to not only entice and water our appetite with these teachings, but look at our own practices and how to persevere in not the quantity of the sadhanas, but quality into one or two really main practices, and then and try to see the subtle mind operative everyday situation, not just even though gross things happening, but your mind could be working very subtle awareness of the emptiness, impermanence, all of these things. So, of course, teaching of impermanence and emptiness is the one that is the subtlest of the subtle teachings. Don't do this, don't do that, don't kill cow, don't drink chang. These things are easy teachings. You might even stop drinking chang altogether, but don't do any eating meat or whatever. But so what? You're still deluded in thinking I'm pure, I'm good, and he's not. So defeat the very purpose. Anyway, so the Vajrayana is an accelerator of the practice of understanding right view. And when it uses the subtle wind, subtle droplet, subtle air, it's only subtle because your mind is so clear to know the right view teachings. Objectives of Vajrayana is same as Mahayana. Its technique is using the form, color, and art, visual activities, and this kind of the Vajrayana paraphernalia, meditative, mantra, dhyana, mudra, and all the other facets of use in order to instigate the subtle mind and wind. Thank you. Let's do the dedication merits. Da deva menzagam nez me alebera biram de ojana bada desenade erenda mahayana deje vadeva merera hevagra mehobe begazalavaza Choedak Mahayana Dija Courage Manjujinyavada Azama Trabhadra Delava Palove Ahode Zamba Ajada Degade Mere Mede Zelembo Dicida Tebe Verenaya Danza Where has been Bo Mejengri Freely with the generation.
So hi everyone, just a quick announcement. As Rinpoche mentioned, there'll be one more class next week because we're actually planning to finish today, but because we had a holiday that we're celebrating 1 week instead, we'll extend it so that next week will be the final lesson. So we'll see you same time, same place next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank